Hello and welcome to the Asian Game here at the FIFA Women's World Cup, where of course all our coverage is sponsored by our good friends at SMC. Forgive a little bit of the patriotism with the green and gold scarf I've got on tonight, but it is a momentous day, a momentous occasion for not just Australian football but Australian sport as well. The Matildas have made it through to the semi-finals of the FIFA Women's World Cup. They are through to the Final Four, the first time they've ever done so at this tournament, overcoming that hurdle that they've seemed to get stuck on so many times, eliminating France 7-6 on penalty shootouts in one of the most dramatic quarterfinals you are ever likely to see. It's been a day of remarkable scenes across Australia. I've come down to the FIFA Fan Festival here in Adelaide, where we've just seen England win through. It will be Australia versus England in that semi-final. England defeating Colombia 2-1 in that second semi-final today to book their progression through to the semi-finals today. But it's all about the Matildas here in Australia. As I said, this moment, this team, this tournament has captured the nation like nothing else that we've ever seen before, perhaps since the Sydney Olympics 23 years ago when Cathy Freeman did what she did. But some of the scenes that we've seen today, the country literally stopped for this moment. There were live sites all around the country. I think there were 12 in Sydney alone. There was a massive one outside Stadium Australia before that England-Colombia game. No, that stadium was, half empty just before kickoff. So many people were still outside watching the end of the Matildas game. Here, where I am at the Fan Festival down in Adelaide, this was absolutely packed earlier, full of green and gold as people tried to catch a glimpse to see if the Matildas could make history, and of course they have done so. But some of the scenes that we've seen across the country, if you know the Australian sporting landscape and the way the AFL dominates the landscape here, we saw AFL games stopped and pushed back as people, as the Matildas basically took centre stage. That the game was put on the big screens at all the AFL venues today. Before those games, people were glued to the TV in the members' lounges, in the concourses of those stadiums. They weren't actually paying attention to what was happening on the field at the AFL games. They were all glued to the TV screens watching the Matildas. It's just been a remarkable day of action, remarkable day. The game itself, as I said, finished 0-0 after full time and extra time, but it certainly wasn't lacking in any action. France had the best of probably the first half. Probably should have taken the lead early on as well. Had a gilt-edged opportunity from a corner that they somehow missed, a gaping net in front of them that let the Matildas off the hook. And the Matildas kind of grew into the game a little bit from then, got back into the game as that first half wore on, but couldn't find their way through. Neither could France. It went to half-time at 0-0. Australia came out of the for the second half absolutely all guns blazing. They probably should have opened the scoring early in that second half. Mary Fowler had a great opportunity and she was brilliant again for Australia tonight, really growing into this tournament and announcing herself on the global stage. But she found so much space in the box early in the second half, had all the time. She just needed to place the ball either side of the keeper and she would have scored, and somehow managed to conspire to hit it straight at the keeper and keep the scores 0-0. But it was to end that way as well. Both teams again had their chances in extra time as well, but it wasn't to be. And then it went through to the penalty shootout, which was one of the most dramatic penalty shootouts that you're ever likely to see. Australia winning 7-6, and as I said, dramatic penalty shootout. It was, as we've since found out, the longest penalty shootout in World Cup history, men's or women's. It went down to the 10th taker, I think it was. As I said, Australia winning 7-6. Had two opportunities before that to actually clinch it. Mackenzie Arnold missed her shot, bounced off the woodwork. Claire Hunt saw her shot saved, and there was kind of like this sense of impending doom. Australia's had so much World Cup heartbreak over the years, and you just kind of got engulfed in that emotion where it was like, here we go again. It's not going to happen like this, but it wasn't to be. Mackenzie Arnold was massive, overcame those mental sort of demons that she would have had after missing her penalty to produce a couple of clutch saves. It was a remarkable day. It's a couple of hours after it, and I still don't quite know how to put it into words. What we saw today in Australia was absolutely massive. The fact that Australia is now going to play England, and we know the sporting rivalry that exists between Australia and England, the old rivals, Wednesday night at Stadium Australia in Sydney is going to be bigger than anything we've ever seen in this country. It's going to be huge. I still can't quite put into words what happened earlier today. So to try and help me do a better job of that. A little bit earlier, I had a chance to speak to David Basheer, who called the game for Network 7 here in Australia. And this is my little chat with David as we try to make sense of what we just witnessed. David Basheer, thanks very much for joining us. You're back in your hotel room now, hopefully calmed down and started to get your thoughts a little bit after that one. How on earth do we begin to sum up that game? That was just the most remarkable game of football.
Paul, that was unbelievable. I don't think you could get higher sporting drama. Forget about football drama, sporting drama in general. I've never heard a noise in a stadium like that, and I've been to World Cup finals, a lot of major events around the world. There's just something about the passion of a national team, either the Socceroos, but especially this Matildas team. They've captured the imagination of the Australian public because I think they're so real. You know, everything you see about them is what's in front of you is real. So it was staggering. I must look a bit dishevelled because that's the way I feel. I think everybody who watched it feels the same way. It was just an amazing piece of sporting drama.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling a little bit the same. Talk to us now about that penalty drama. It was a remarkable penalty shootout, something like we've never seen before. Australia had two opportunities to actually win it. Mackenzie Arnold had the opportunity. She was the fifth taker, which surprised a lot of people, surprised me certainly. She had the chance to win it, saw her post smash off the post, and then Claire Hunt, again, a couple of penalties later, had the opportunity to win it. Her penalty was saved, and I don't know, Australia's had so much heartbreak over the years. There was kind of, for me anyway, there was kind of this sense of impending doom about the whole thing. What was it like inside the stadium? Was that kind of sense there as well?
Well, Mackenzie had just saved the penalty, and it was all for the headlines, wasn't it? A Queensland girl stepping up to take the winning penalty, and you know she's gone. She sent the keeper the wrong way, but against the upright. It was one of those moments, and you thought exactly that, Paul. It was lost. The moment was lost, but she dusted herself off. Claire Hunt, I felt for Claire Hunt in her 11th appearance for Australia. What she's done at this World Cup has been phenomenal. You know, she's going to, be one of injury. If she stays away from injury, which has plagued her in the last few years, she's going to be one of the top defenders in world football on what we've seen. Unbelievable tournament. So you felt for her, and then Courtney Vine steps up. You know, the unlikely Courtney Vine, who started the first match, 2 matches for the Matildas, was replaced, and that's when Australia sort of found their rhythm. And you talk about those penalty moments in the past. You know, the quarterfinal of the 2016 Olympics when we lost to Brazil in Belo Horizonte. That was heartbreaking in 2019, 4 years ago against Norway in Nice. It was equally heartbreaking. So there's been moments, and France have had their own World Cup heartache. We've seen that, but it was just staggering piece of football drama. We probably should have wrapped the match up, as you know, in the first section of the second half, not the second half of extra time, but the second half when Australia were all over France in that 20-minute frenzy. And how Mary Fowler didn't score, I don't think anybody can comprehend.
Yeah, I'll talk about Mary in a moment, but I just want to talk about Mackenzie Arnold because she may not have won it off her own boot. She had the opportunity. She may not have actually won it off her own boot, but she still did, in a way, win the game for Australia because she was massive in that penalty shootout. She made a number of clutch saves. She saved France's first, and then she sort of overcame the mental demons that she would have had when she missed that penalty. She produced a huge double save because she saved it, and then VAR ruled that she'd crept off her line, so the penalty was retaken, and then she saved it again. Her performance, the clutch saves that she made, she was absolutely massive, and as I said, she may not have actually won it off her own boot, but she still did win the game for Australia, didn't she?
Regular time, extra time, she was enormous, and that's what 4 clean sheets at this World Cup. The first time Australia's ever had a scoreless draw in Women's World Cup history in 30 matches. Amazing performance by Mackenzie Arnold. She stood tall under the most acute of pressure moments. And, Australia's World Cup survival was hanging in the balance at one stage. The way this match ebbed and flowed was incredible, really. France had the first, 20 minutes, Australia sort of came back midway through the first half. Then France had the end of the first half. Australia's frenzied start, and then throughout that whole, duration, Mackenzie Arnold was enormous. There were, I think, 10 players that had a connection in Queensland. 6 were born in the state of Queensland. So it was a pretty proud moment for the state that's produced a lot of Matildas, in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, it really feels like to get beyond the quarterfinal stage. Of course, Australia's never done that before, so we've fallen at this stage a couple of times before. So it felt like we'd overcome a major mental hurdle to get beyond this point. It almost feels like there's a real belief now within the team, within the nation, that Australia can actually go on and do this now that we've sort of overcome this hurdle, now that we've made the semi-final down to the final four. It feels like there's a real belief now that we've overcome that mental hurdle. As I said, we've made the semi-final of the Olympics, but to do it at a World Cup feels a little bit different. So to have overcome that hurdle, I don't know about you, but I get a sense that there's a real belief now within everyone here at the Fan Fest, within the team. There's a real belief that Australia can actually go on and win this thing.
Absolutely, and I think that spirit. I know you need quality in the situation, and we kept our defensive structure for long enough to keep France out, and in those transitional moments, we had unbelievable chances to win the match. And I'm so relieved for Mary Fowler because she's had a breakout tournament. She's 20 years of age, Paul. She didn't play a minute of the 2019 World Cup. She was the youngest player selected in any squad. And she declared to everybody at age 15 she was going to be the best player in the world, which sounded fanciful at the time. But now people are seeing what she produces, and nobody's arguing that could actually take place.
Yeah, she was absolutely clutch for Australia tonight. She had a couple of great opportunities that she probably should have converted and perhaps sealed the match for Australia in regulation time. She had that one in that second half where she hit it straight at the keeper. But she was enormous, and she has kind of, as you said, really announced herself on the global stage at this tournament. She is still just 20 years of age, and with Sam Kerr out, we needed Mary Fowler to step up in her absence. Mary Fowler, Caitlin Ford, they really needed to step up in Sam's absence, and they've both absolutely done that. They've both been brilliant in this tournament, and they were again today as well.
Yeah, and Australia were out on their feet, and seriously, I was speaking to John Aloisi after the match. John Aloisi and also Elise Kellum-Knight, a great Matilda, over 100 caps, a brilliant player. And they were surprised that Gustafsson didn't go to his bench a little bit more. Obviously, that starting 11 are the players he believes can produce the quality to win matches at this level. I get that. But, Cooney Cross was spent and she had to be replaced. I'm not sure Gorry had too much left to give. There was a lot of players out on their feet late. It was a very physical match. It was a warm day in Brisbane today. And I think it took a lot out of the players, not just Australia, but the French players as well. And credit to both teams, Paul. In that penalty shootout, no one wants to lose a match and be kicked out of a World Cup in that fashion. But they kept their nerve. They kept their nerve, those players, and it's been a great credit to the quality of the sort of football that's been produced at this tournament that they could stretch it that far. It's the longest penalty shootout, men's or women's, in World Cup history.
Tony Gustafsson has been at pains to point out throughout this tournament the praise that he's given to his Triple SM team, as he calls it, sports science and sports medicine team, for the work they've done in getting players ready for this tournament, and the work they've done in getting Sam Kerr to overcome her calf injury as well. He's going to have to call upon them again, because going to extra time, there were, as you said, a number of players were absolutely spent out there. Steph Catley was one. She seemed like she could barely walk by the end of it. Do you think there's any concern? It's a short turnaround now before the game on Wednesday night in Sydney. Any concern over the fitness of the players? Because he's pretty much stuck to the same 11 throughout the tournament. Hasn't made a lot of changes. I think Australia's substitutes have had the least amount of minutes of any in the tournament overall. So he's really stuck to the 11 that he's got, and he trusts them throughout the game. He makes his substitutions late. Didn't make the full 5, I don't think, again today. So is there any concerns over the fitness of the players pulling up after such a gruelling encounter like this, do you think?
Well, I just hope there's no lingering problems. I don't think there is with Steph Catley, but you're right. She was out on her feet late in the match and got through so much work in a really dangerous area of the pitch for Australia too. Um, I'm just looking at their bench. Like, Claire Wheeler hasn't seen any time. Alex Chidiak's just barely been on the pitch. Obviously, no Kaya Simon. Charlotte Grant appeared very briefly in the tournament. Courtney Nevin we haven't seen. So, I think he's going to try to resist to make those type of changes against either England or Colombia. We don't really know yet. But, it's back to what they do best. You mentioned the sports and medical team. They've done a brilliant job with the Matildas. They patched up a lot of players before this World Cup. They've got them to this point. Even Alana Kennedy, didn't play much football leading up to the tournament, and Claire Polkinghorne had those injury concerns. So absolutely, it is an issue. I think it's going to be an issue for whoever Australia meets. I think at this stage of the tournament, with compressed, deadlines between matches, the physical capabilities of the players are always going to be put in question. But the positive is, when Sam Kerr came on, she injected energy in Australia's performance, and so did Courtney Vine. I think those two players, Courtney Vine could have won it very late on in the match. He had a couple of really good chances, actually. That's the type of impact we want, and that's a real positive. Tamika Yallop coming on as well. So, yeah, we can do it. We can go all the way. There's no doubt.
And just finally on the tournament overall, I mean, there was a comment last weekend from a very prominent sports reporter that suggested, or she thought, that the tournament hadn't actually cut through into the mainstream here in Australia. I don't know if she was watching tonight or not, but it certainly has. This tournament has been... It's been bigger than I think anyone ever thought it would be. And, of course, the Matildas making it through to the Final Four, which probably goes beyond expectations. I know some people thought they could go on and win it, but probably coming in 10th ranked nation, I think making the Final Four goes beyond all of that. But some of the scenes we've seen today with, it being shown on big screens at all the AFL matches, and it was an AFL reporter that mentioned it, but it being shown on big screens at all the AFL matches, those matches effectively being stopped or delayed, pushed back their start times to accommodate the Matildas game being shown, people at all of those games glued to the TV, not actually watching the action on the pitch. It has not failed to cut through. It has absolutely cut through. You've been covering, you've been at all the Matildas games. Can you quite believe just how big this tournament has become? I think it's bigger than any of us thought it was ever going to be.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's record attendances, record TV figures, exposure huge. And I've had the privilege of covering Women's World Cup since 2007. So it's been a long time. Even, I joked with Claire Polkinghorne when she made her debut. I was calling that particular World Cup in 07 off tube, obviously, and SBS back then didn't send us to World Cups, but we still broadcast the tournament. It's been amazing, Paul. It's been, life-changing for a lot of people in football, and perhaps outside of football as well, seeing the impact this tournament can have on so many people. And I just hope governments see the real positives. You do a lot of work in Asia. You know how big the sport is. I've got friends all over the world that love football, and they see the benefit of investing in football. The one thing's for sure, and John Aloisi told me this tonight, if we put the handbrake on in any way in investment in women's football, the rest of the world will just pass us by. So we have to keep moving forward with investment in grassroots facilities and all the things that the football community's spoken about for so long. That has to happen, because there's too competitive a landscape in Australian sport for it not to happen and us to be competitive.
Well, Bash, thanks very much for joining us. I hope you give yourself a stiff drink after that one and enjoy some relaxation. Great calling tonight. Good calling for Wednesday night, because another huge game awaits Australia as they prepare to take on whoever wins tonight out of England and Colombia. But thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Paul. Go the Tillies.
All right, and a big thanks to Dave again for all of his time immediately after the game there. That is where we will leave things here for today on a momentous day for Australian football. The Asian Odyssey lives on here at the FIFA Women's World Cup. So as the next couple of days progress and we build up to that semi-final between Australia and England, keep across the Asian game as we'll have full build-up to that game. A huge game as we hope Australia make it through to the final on home soil. But that is where we will leave things, as I said, for today. Big thanks to our sponsors, SMC, for once again for all their generous support throughout this tournament. We couldn't do any of what we're doing without their support, so we thank them enormously. It's been a massive day. I'm going to go home, probably watch the replay, watch it all again, relive it again. But until I speak to you next time, it's bye for now.